and Tommy Wiseau may not seem to have much in common. The former is an Oscar-nominated actor, a director, a writer and a sometimes professor, while the latter is the mysterious and peculiar creator of the disastrous cult classic The Room. One's an insider, the other's an outsider. Franco is from California, while Wiseau's origins are unknown. But turns out that he and Wiseau share more than a love of James Dean. They both arrived in LA around the same time with hopes of becoming actors, attended acting classes in the Valley, ate at Ernie's Taco House, and discovered how challenging it can be to break into Hollywood. Franco discovered Wiseau's story through Greg Sestero's 2013 book The Disaster Artist, My Life Inside the Room, the greatest bad film ever made. I'm like the only guy that came to the room through a book, and decided to make it into a film. It was such an incredible, bizarre story, unlike any other Hollywood story, but underneath, it was so universal and moving, because it's the story of outsider artists trying to achieve their dreams, Franco says. Here, Franco explains how he convinced Wiseau to let him star in The Disaster Artist, why he stayed in character throughout the shoot and more. When did you first see The Room? I was late to the game on The Room. There was a billboard that Tommy Wiseau paid for himself to have up on Highland in Los Angeles for 5 years, and it was him with a lazy eyelid sort of glaring down at you, and it said The Room. And then there was a phone number, and it was like, what has a phone number on it? I just always thought it was this weird cult, or some odd LA thing, like call the number, and this crazy, weird vampire can be in your, or something. And then the book The Disaster Artist came out 4 years ago. The Disaster Artist was written by one of the other actors in it, Greg Sestero, who my brother, Dave Franco, plays in our, and this guy Tom Bissell. I'm like the only guy that came to the room through a book. I started reading the book, and before I was halfway through, I just knew. It was such an incredible, bizarre story, unlike any other Hollywood story, but underneath, it was so universal and moving, because it's the story of outsider artists trying to achieve their dreams. So, then I went to a screening. I was in Vancouver at the time, working on the interview with Seth Rogen, and I went to a midnight screening in Vancouver, and it was incredible. It was an event. There are spoons, and footballs, and tuxedos, and everyone yelling at the screen, and lots of weed. It was just incredible. James Franco wears a Balenciaga shirt, his own pants. Photographs by Jurgen Teller styled by Edward N. Info. When did you first meet Tommy? I learned I had to get not only the rights of the book, but I had to get Tommy and Greg's life rights. And so, the first time I ever talked to Tommy was on the phone to get his life rights, and I was like, alright, what's up, man? I didn't want to suggest that I play him in case he didn't like that idea. I had no idea what he was gonna think about that, and I didn't have the contract yet, so I was very sheepish. He goes, so who play me? And I was like, well, I don't, I don't know Tommy, I don't know. And he's like, well, how about Johnny Depp? And I laughed. He was immediately like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, well, Johnny Depp's like the biggest star in the world. I don't know. And he was like, now, we go back to before. I said Johnny Depp and you laugh. Why you laughing? I'm like, alright, Tommy, I'll ask Johnny Depp. Well, see if he'll do it. And he's like, yeah, you don't go down that road, you don't know at the end of alley, you know. And I'm like, very wise, Tommy. Yeah, very, very wise. How did you end up playing him in the film? I didn't know that Tommy was a huge James Dean fan, but I guess Tommy had watched my TV of James Dean many times. Greg goes, how about you, James? And I'm still sort of sheepish, and like, well, yeah, maybe. And Tommy goes, yeah, James, I seen your stuff. You know, you do some good things, you do some bad things. I'm like, okay, thanks, yeah? Coming from you, Tommy, thanks, man. And he goes, yeah, maybe I'll direct you in a someday, and I'm, yeah, okay. Okay, maybe. But then later I learned that the two people that he wanted were Johnny Depp and me. So, we were strangely meant to be. It was amazing, because Tommy's hero was James Dean, and one of my heroes was James Dean. We both kinda came to LA around the same time, and so, when I first read the book, one saw that idea that Tommy is unlike any other person. This story is unlike any other story, but underneath, I could completely relate. I realized that this is an incredibly personal story for me. Even when we were like going in location scouting, I'm like, oh my, this is the Ernie's Taco House where I used to eat when I was a struggling actor. There are these little acting classes in the Valley where I went, and it was like, this is strangely like my story. What was the film's premiere like? When Tommy premiered The Room, he premiered it at this theater on Beverly called Lamel's Fairfax. He had made all these t-shirts for the room, and he drove to the Chinese theater in his stretch white limo, popped out of the sunroof, and threw his room shirts at everybody outside the Chinese theater that night, said, "Hi, don't go see that, come see my," and then there we were 14 years later, at the Chinese theater, premiering about his life. It was kind of incredible. When I introduced I was like, when Tommy introduced his 14 years ago, he said, this my life, be cool. And I said, I'll say the same thing. This my life, be cool. 'Cause it's my story. In a weird way, Gal Gadot wears Giorgio Armani jacket, Fabergé necklace, her own earring. James Franco wears Giorgio Armani jacket, shirt, and bow tie. Photographs by Jurgen Teller. Styled by Edward and Infel. Set design by Peter Klein at Frank Reps. Hair for Gadot and Franco by Yusuf for Rich Hair Care at Factory Downtown. Makeup for Gadot and Franco by Fulvia Farolfi. For Chanel. Manicures by Michelle Saunders for Essie at Forward Artists. In addition to starring in you also directed the film. Did you stay in character the whole time, even when you were directing? I famously stayed in character, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, when I was directing. So, you talked to your own brother as Tommy, laughs, yeah? Well, I kinda didn't even realize I was doing it, but I've been thinking about it. I went through 2.5 hours of makeup and prosthetics, and putting on the wig, and everything every morning. I just plain looked different, and people just treated me differently, you know what I mean. This is probably the only time in my whole career I'll be directing and acting in it, playing a guy that's directing that he's acting in. It was so much easier to just simplify everything, and be one dude throughout. And I think it helped the vibe on the set. It was like, these actors were playing actors in and to be Tommy, I think, just created an atmosphere. I learned later, my brother and Seth would warn people. They'd be like, alright, before you go on set, just realize it's a little weird. James is directing as Tommy. I didn't know that there was a whole prep before they got to set, but the prep didn't help. Every time a new cast member would come to start work, there was like a period of adjustment. They would show up, and just be like, what the F, like, this is insane. Gal Gadot, Emma Stone, Margot Robbie and more are the best performances of the year previous. Next 138th Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone. Toggle wears Dior dress, Dior fine jewelry, earrings, and ring. Beauty, Dior, wears Louis Vuitton dress. Beauty, L'Oreal Paris. Watch, The Disaster Artist. Sorry, Grainer explains the room in 1 minute.